week on countermeasures, I had the opportunity to speak with London bureau chief of the New York Times, John Fisher Burns, about the international response to the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 tragedy. He is the London bureau chief at the present time, but he's also been on the forefront of covering terrorism in the Middle East, and he's actually been called the Dean of Foreign Correspondence. You know, I know that you happen to be covering Al-Qaeda and tracking Osama bin Laden in Yemen just prior to 9/11, and that you filed a story about your concerns about some attack on U.S. soil just 2 days before the events of 9/11. I wanted to open the program with you being able to talk about that and then your reaction when you saw what had happened on that fateful day.
Well, I want to say to begin with that I'm not a seer. I don't have a crystal ball. And the story that I had written that was pending publication on the weekend before 9/11, and indeed was still pending publication on the morning that those two planes hit the towers, resulted from an assignment of mine by the New York Times in the years that preceded 9/11 as the chief Islamic affairs correspondent, which had taken me many times to places that have become very familiar to Americans since 9/11, including the Yemen, where, as your viewers will recall, there had been an attack in October 2000 on the USS Cole that killed 17 sailors and injured seriously, in many cases, several dozen others. That was an Al-Qaeda attack. It was a curtain raiser for what happened on 9/11, and it sent me delving deep into audio and videotapes that bin Laden had made in the months before 9/11, in which there was ultimately, in a speech that bin Laden made to a wedding of his son outside Kandahar in January or February 2001, a very clear threat that Al-Qaeda intended to attack America. The phrase, as I recall it, that was most outstanding. And he appeared to be talking to an audience that he was messianic in aspect, wearing white robes against a blue sky, talking, as it seemed, to people who had enlisted as suicide bombers. And he said, we will attack America in their own places. We will make them weep in their places as they have made us weep in ours. And then he talks to these people and he says, you can't see who they are, but we know now that at that time, there were some of those 19 people who boarded those planes on 9/11 in those Al-Qaeda camps around Kandahar at the time. We write long stories. They're held in what we call an overheld queue. There wasn't space for it in the 3 days before 9/11 for one reason and another. And so there it was, still on the overheld list of the New York Times foreign desk when the planes hit the towers.
Now, I just want to take a point to make it clear to our viewers on overheld that basically you filed this story 2 days before 9/11, but it wasn't held back for political reasons or anything other than there was just a lack of space in the New York Times.
Absolutely.
And so they were planning to run it. There didn't seem to be any sense of urgency about it. So, you know, in hindsight, you think, well, gosh, they should have run it, but, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. So I want to make it clear that this wasn't any conspiracy. This was just no room in the paper.
There were those in the aftermath of 9/11, conspiracy theorists who always leap on these things, who ultimately made something of that the New York Times had this story. But I have to confess,
the conspiracy theorists tried to make it into something that it really wasn't.
That's absolutely right, and I appreciate the opportunity on your program to set that right.
I'll miss you these next 2 weeks, but I'll be on a whirlwind book tour around the country. While I'm gone, please visit us at emPOWERme.tv and catch up on episodes and clips you may have missed. And join me, Rebecca Costa, back here live on October 3rd when I welcome G. Edward Griffin, best-selling author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, to discuss whether or not the Federal Reserve is a good or bad institution for America's future. Save up your questions and don't forget to speak up. See you October 3rd, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, online at emPOWERme.tv.